Picture Wall Street at the turn of the 20th century. Top hats, cigar smoke, men who measure their worth in railroad miles and banknotes, and then, cut through the crowd, an older woman in plain black, carrying a small lunch and a face that says, "I don't need your approval." They called her the Witch of Wall Street. Her name was Hetty Green, and in an era obsessed with showing off wealth, she became famous for doing the opposite, having immense power and refusing to look like it. But here's what most people miss. This isn't just a story about a miser. This is a story about liquidity, leverage, and what happens when the person with the most cash decides to play defense while everyone else plays fantasy. Because Hetty Green didn't become powerful by being flashy. She became powerful by being available, exactly when nobody else was. Welcome to Footnotes of History, where we bring the side characters onto the center stage, where we tell the stories that complete history, the overlooked people, and those forgotten moments. Hetty was born in 1834 into a wealthy Quaker family in New Bedford, Massachusetts, a world shaped by shipping, trade, and the whaling economy. From childhood, she absorbed money like a second language, not the buy things side of money, the structure side. What a bond is, what a contract means, what happens when credit disappears. And that mindset shaped her entire career. Hetty didn't chase excitement, she chased certainty. She bought solid assets, she kept cash, she waited. And when the markets panicked, when people were desperate, when prices fell off a cliff, when credit froze, Hetty Green didn't freeze. She moved. This is the part that turns her from a personality into a finance lesson. When everyone is forced to sell, the buyer with cash sets the terms. That's not cruelty. That's the math of markets. And Hetty understood it well. In crises, she could lend when banks couldn't. She could demand collateral when others were begging. She could buy assets at panic prices while the rest of Wall Street was trying to survive until Friday. During the Panic of 1907, when fear spread faster than facts, she was known for having cash available and making loans. To some people, she was a strategic genius. To others, she was a vulture. But either way, the result was the same. She became one of the most formidable private financiers of the Gilded Age. But then there's the scandal that followed her like a shadow. In the mid-1860s, Grandaunt Sylvia Ann Howland died, leaving a fortune around $2 million. The will directed significant money to charities and other beneficiaries, while also providing Hetty a substantial benefit through a trust arrangement. Hetty challenged the outcome, and the dispute exploded into one of the most famous will cases of the century, Robinson vs. Mandel, often called the Howland will case. Hetty produced what she claimed was an earlier will, one that conveniently left everything to her, plus an addendum that allegedly revoked all other wills. The defense argued the signature on the addendum was forged. Expert witnesses testified it was essentially a perfect trace, and a Harvard mathematician, Benjamin Pierce, even presented statistical arguments for why an exact duplicate signature was overwhelmingly unlikely by chance. The case was ultimately dismissed on legal grounds, but it cemented her reputation, brilliant, relentless, and willing to fight for every dollar. And from that point on, the country didn't just see her as a wealthy investor. They saw her as someone who would fight to the last inch for what she believed was hers. Whether you consider that strength or obsession depends on your temperament. But in finance terms, it created something far more powerful than wealth. It created fear. And fear is a kind of leverage. Hetty Green lived in stark simplicity. She wore plain black. She avoided luxuries. Stories said she moved constantly, kept her valuables close, and treated spending like a moral failure. Hetty didn't trust institutions. She didn't trust banks. She didn't trust that the system would protect her wealth. So she acted like the world was always one step away from a run on the bank. And when you see it that way, her lifestyle stops being a quirky headline and starts looking like a strategy, an extreme strategy, but still a strategy. A person who believes the world is unstable will always choose control over comfort. And Hetty chose control every time. Hetty married Edward H. Green in 1867, and they had 2 children, Ned and Sylvia. According to many popular retellings, her children grew up in extreme austerity. Plain clothes, constant moving, a life that looked nothing like the balance sheet. Stories claim she moved constantly to avoid taxes. Stories claim she lived without heat. Stories claim she ate the simplest food and wore the same style of dress for years. Some of those tales have evidence behind them. Others were amplified by a press corps that loved turning a powerful woman into a monster. Even modern financial historians point out that some of the witch narrative was shaped by the era's sexism and by the public's fascination with a woman who refused to perform wealth the way society expected. Some of this frugality is well attested, but the most haunting claim, the one that's repeated in documentaries, articles, and dinner table history, is the story of her son's leg. It's the claim that her son, Ned, suffered a serious leg injury as a boy, and that Hetty delayed proper treatment because she didn't want to pay, seeking the cheapest option, sometimes described as even attempting free care. The injury worsens over time, then infection set in, and eventually the leg is amputated. Hetty Green dies in 1916 at 81 with a fortune that stunned the nation. Her fortune is commonly described in the range of $100 to $200 million in her era, an amount that translates into billions today, depending on how you measure it. Her son, Ned, goes in one direction, more indulgent, more expansive, drawn to big projects and big spending after a lifetime under the shadow of austerity. He built mansions, bought a private island, constructed the largest yacht then known, though he was too seasick to use it, and kept young women as wards. He broadcast from his own radio station. He spent lavishly seeking popularity and acceptance. When Ned died in 1936, he'd somehow maintained a decent fortune, which he left mostly to his sister Sylvia. But her daughter, Sylvia, goes somewhere far more interesting. Sylvia grows up quiet, sheltered, shaped by a mother whose entire identity was built around control. Sylvia Green Wilkes died in 1951, with an estate widely reported around $95 million. And in her will, she left a token amount to family, then directed the overwhelming remainder to 63 charities, including schools, libraries, hospitals, churches, and other institutions. Think about that. A mother remembered for not spending. A daughter who made sure the money didn't stay locked in a family legend. You can call it charity, you can call it conscience, you can even call it rebellion. But either way, the ending lands like a final verdict. Hetty Green amassed one of the great fortunes of American history and became famous for living like she had nothing. And then her daughter ensured that, in the end, the fortune flowed outward to everyone else.